it is necessary to change the seasons in post. In this series of tutorials, you will learn how to use After Effects and Photoshop to make a bright green springtime park into fall. We will be using a beautiful video of a springtime park from Dissolve. Before getting started, we'd like to say thank you to Dissolve and their contributor, Wonder Visuals, for their video. We're going to start off by giving the shot a more golden hue using a matte and an adjustment layer. We will then paint colored leaf elements in Photoshop. Then back in After Effects, you will track the trees so we can get the leaf layers moving with the pan. We're going to finish off the shot by adding some more orange leaves with an adjustment layer and a mask using tracking data. And in the end, you will have created a colorful New England fall foliage out of a scene that was shot in spring. So with that, let's get started. In this lesson, we will start our fall transformation by giving the shot a more golden hue using a matte and an adjustment layer. So we have this beautiful springtime scene. The camera is panning past green grass and green trees, and we're going to change this to a fall scene, starting off by adjusting the green to be a more golden hue. Before we do any color adjustments, let's make sure the project settings are set to linear color space. That's going to give us a much more realistic result as we adjust the colors. So just go up to File and select Project Settings. It's off the window, but it's at the bottom of the menu. And just make sure you have the working space set to sRGB and you have linearized working space turned on. Now, if you want to learn more about linear workflow in After Effects, you can check out my course in this subject, Linear Workflow in After Effects. But for now, this is how to change the project settings. Click OK to accept. So now to make these color adjustments, we're going to make a matte first. So select the footage and hit Control-D to duplicate it. And then you're going to want to hit Enter, and we'll rename this Matte Golden Hue. Now to create this matte, we're going to use the key light effect. Usually you use key light to key out green screens and blue screens, but we're going to use it to key the green grass and the green trees. So to select key light, just go up to Effects and go down to Keying, and then the submenu that's off the screen right now, go towards the bottom and select key light. The first step using key light is you want to pick a screen color. And we're going to use the layer window to pick our screen color, because that way we can see the scene and see the matte that's being created at the same time. So to open up the layer window, just double-click on the matte golden hue and open up the layer window. And then you're going to want to go to key light and set the view from final result to screen matte. And that way you're going to see the matte that's being created. Right now it's blank because we haven't made the matte yet. Now in the layer window, we're going to want to see the original scene. So just move the window over a little bit so you can see the view menu, and you're going to want to set that view to none. That way you can see the original scene. So let's zoom out to 200% so we can see some more of this scene. And we're going to pan over here. And now if we select our screen color, we select the eyedropper, and you want to hold down the Alt key on Windows, Option key in a Mac, and as we move this eyedropper around, we're seeing in the other window the matte that we're going to create, depending on which color we pick. And we can see all of these different shades of green, which one is going to make the best matte for us. We want something that's not going to be too dark and not going to be too light. Somewhere in between the two is what we're looking for. This looks pretty good right there. So now we can adjust this matte a little bit, make it a little bit more contrasty so we can see some more of the sky. We can do that clicking on the Screen Matte submenu, and then we're just going to increase the clip black just a bit to about 26. So that's giving us the kind of matte we want, maybe a little bit less. So now we have our matte. We can close our layer window and turn off its visibility for now. And to adjust the color, we're going to need an adjustment layer. So go up to Layer and select New and Adjustment Layer. We'll move this under the matte golden hue and hit Enter, and we'll rename this Golden Hue ADJ for Adjustment Layer. Don't need to see the layer window. So now with this adjustment layer, the effect we're going to use is Hue Saturation to adjust the color here. So go up, with it selected, go up to Effects, go under Color Correction, and select Hue Saturation. It's towards the bottom of the submenu. It's off screen right now. And now we're just going to adjust the master control right now. This adjusts all the color in the scene. And we're going to change the master hue to -17. So that's adjusting the color, all the colors in the scene, to be more reddish. And we're also going to increase the saturation to 39. So that's giving us a nice view, but it's giving us way too much. It's because we're not using the matte. It's affecting the tree trunks and the sky as well as the leaves. So to use the matte, select Golden Hue Adjustment Layer, click on Toggle Switches and Modes, and under Track Matte, you're going to want to set this to Luma Inverted Matte. So now it's using the matte, and it's only affecting the green areas of the scene. So that looks pretty good. We're coming along. We want to take a little bit more of the green out of this grass and the trees, make it a little bit less green looking. So let's add another hue saturation effect to this adjustment layer. So with it selected, go up to Effects, back under Color Correction, and select Hue Saturation again. So in the second hue saturation effect, we're just going to affect the green channel. So change the channel control from master to greens. So now it's only going to affect the areas specified in this channel range. So let's adjust the green now to be quite a bit redder, to -45. And it doesn't seem like it's doing anything. That's because we need to adjust the channel range to affect more of the scene, more of the green in the scene. Now if you bring these layer bars out, it's going to give us a better result and look more reddish looking. Then we just have to adjust the saturation a bit. Let's adjust that to 39. Give it a little more saturation. Let's give us a pretty nice result. You can see it's taking a lot of the green out. But when we do that, it's making the grass look quite a bit too patchy looking. There's very large blank areas in here that look too abrupt. If you zoom in, you can see it more closely. So you don't want this patchy looking grass. We can fix this by adding some blur to the matte. So select the matte and go up to Effects, and under Blur Sharpen, we'll select our Fast Blur. It's on the submenu off screen, but it's about towards the middle of it. And let's increase the blurriness of this Fast Blur to 25. As you can see, that eliminates the patchy grass problem and gives us a much nicer looking result. So there we have it. Turn with it before and after. So our fall scene is coming along nicely, and you've learned how to adjust colors by using adjustment layers and a matte. In the next lesson, we're going to paint some leaf layers in Photoshop. In this lesson, you will learn how to paint the colored leaf elements in Photoshop. So I went ahead and rendered out the last frame of the After Effects file from the previous lesson as a still image, and we're going to use this as a reference in Photoshop to paint some leaf layers. Before we do that, we need to set the color settings to also be at linear color space, so they'll match the After Effects file. So to do that, you just go to Edit, and go to Color Settings, and then make sure it's set to monitor color, and then you're going to want to make sure you check on Blend RGB colors using Gamma 1.0, which is linear color space. Click OK, and then under Image Mode, make sure you have it set to RGB color, because that's what you want to work in for video and film. So now that that's all settled, we need some brushes to paint these leaves. And we're going to use the brushes made for the course Creating Foliage Brushes for Digital Illustration by Kurt Jones. Now, if you're interested in learning to create your own brushes, I recommend you check out this course. But for now, we're just going to use the brushes from that course. And to load them, select your brush tool and right-click into the image window, and then go to the little gear submenu, and you're going to want to click on Replace Brushes. And then just navigate to your project files and go to the Reference Files folder, and then you'll find a file called Foliage Brushes. Select that and click Load. And now we have all these cool leaf brushes, and we're going to use the first one, this pointy brush here. So then go to our window, and we can adjust the size of the brush in the Brush Presets Size slider. Just drag that down. Another way to adjust the size of the brush is to hold down the Alt key and drag to the right or the left with the right mouse button. That's an easy way to resize the brush. But I highly recommend you use a Wacom tablet to paint. It makes it a lot easier, and you can also control the size of the brush with the pressure on the Wacom tablet. If you look at the brush presets that's already been set up for this brush, under Shape Dynamics, the size jitter is set to pen pressure. So the harder you press, the larger the leaves are going to be, and the lighter you press, the smaller they're going to be. It's also set for scattering. They'll be scattered farther apart the harder you press, and the transfer mode is set so the opacity is controlled by the pressure too. So that's a much easier and intuitive way to control the brush as you're painting, to get some smaller, lighter brush strokes in the distance by just using a lighter touch on the Wacom tablet. So now we're going to go close this brush window, and we're going to paint some orange leaves. So let's make a new layer. Click on the new layer icon, and double-click on that, and we'll call this orange leaves. And let's get an orange color. We can select the color from the scene and then just make it brighter and more saturated by using the saturation and brightness sliders. We can also adjust its hue a little bit, make it a little more reddish orangey. And we're going to want to use a different layer mode than normal. We're going to change this to overlay. And by setting it to overlay, it's going to allow the texture of the original leaves to show underneath and affect the texture of the leaves we're painting. And that's going to give us a more realistic result because we'll get all this nice leaf texture for free. So let's select our brush tool, and let's make the brush a little bit smaller. And we're going to start painting some leaves into the background of the scene. So a little bit here. Make sure you have your orange leaf layer selected. As you can see, that this overlay mode is giving us a really nice effect, allowing us to see the leaves underneath the ones we're painting. And as you can see, if we press harder, the leaves are going to get bigger, but we just want a nice light touch here to paint some of these leaves in the background. These faraway leaves. Just painting a little bit here, put them a little bit over here, covering up some of the green in the scene. Some of these green areas. Just a light touch over here, put some back here, and some here. So now if we turn on and off the orange leaf layer, we see the effect we're getting. And we can also use an eraser tool, and we can use that eraser tool with a leaf brush. So we're erasing leaf-sized holes in the image, and that's giving us a really nice result because by erasing leaf-sized holes in it, we're just making the texture even more complex and nicer. It works much better than if you used just a plain old round brush to delete some of these leaves. So we'll give you that same amount of detail you're getting with a leaf-shaped eraser. So those orange leaves are looking pretty good. Now let's make another layer and make some yellow leaves. So I'm going to rename this layer Yellow Leaves. And let's change its color to yellow. And we're going to also set this layer to be the same overlay mode because we want that same effect. And we're just going to paint in some yellow leaves around the same area we had the orange leaves, but a little bit different. It's also a good idea to look at some reference pictures of fall foliage to use as reference as you're painting. You don't have to paint exactly what I'm painting. You can do your own artistic interpretation, but I'm just going to paint some more of these small yellow leaves to the background around the same area we're painting the orange leaves. There. You can see that's adding a little more detail to the scene. So now the final layer we're going to do is some dark red leaves in the foreground. So I'm just making a new layer, double click on it, and we'll make this dark red leaves. Now these leaves, we're going to leave it normal because we're going to be painting leaves in areas where there are no leaves. So we don't want to use overlay because that's going to look strange putting them over the sky. And because with overlay mode, you're getting kind of a transparent effect. You don't want to paint them where there are no leaves already. So we'll leave it set to normal, but we're going to want to make two different shades of dark red because we're going to add more texture not by using overlay mode, but by painting more different shades of leaves in there. So I'm going to make one lighter shade of red and one darker shade of red. So I'm starting with the same hue here, and then we'll make it a little bit darker by adjusting the brightness slider. So let's start with the darker shade of red, and we'll make the brush a little bit bigger, not too much bigger. And we'll start painting some of these foreground leaves in on the top of the frame. And this is giving us a nice framing device for the composition, and also giving us some more different colors in the scene. If you look at some fall foliage reference, many of them have orange leaves and dark red and yellow leaves. So let's try that lighter color to add some more variation in here. I'm painting with a lighter shade of red now. As you can see, that's adding some more texture to these leaves and getting some more variation. It's making it look more like real leaves would look, not just painted leaves. Let's get that eraser tool in there and erase some holes in the, make it a little bit bigger. As you can see, erasing leaf-sized holes is giving us some even more texture and variation. I'm just going to get this dark red brush back and paint a few more leaves in, and I think we'll be done. So off here, and you can paint the leaves how you see fit, but if you do something like this, it's going to look pretty good. Okay, that looks nice. So now you know how to paint colored leaf elements in Photoshop. The next lesson, we're going to go back into After Effects and track the trees in the footage so we can get these Photoshop layers to move with the camera. In this lesson, you will learn how to track the trees so we can get the leaf layers moving along with the pan. So I've gone and imported in the same Photoshop file we made in the previous lesson as a composition. Just going to File, Import, and I put it in the composition folder here, Photoshop Comp folder. And so we can select our leaf layers that we made, hit Control-C to copy them, then go to our Final Comp Fall, hit Control-V, paste those layers in there. And now we have the same leaf layers we made in Photoshop inside of our After Effects composition with the moving footage. So all we have to do now is to get these leaf layers to move with the pan. But all these different trees are moving at different speeds, and so the leaf layers that are associated with those trees are going to have to move at different speeds too. So we're going to have to do track multiple places in this footage. And to keep track of these different places and the tracking data and which area of the screen it refers to, it's a good idea to make some layer numbers as reference so we know which area refers to which part of the screen and which tracking data refers to which leaf area. And we could do it with labeling it, but labels are going to get pretty confusing pretty fast. Things like upper, left, middle, lower, right, upper, middle. It's a lot easier to have some numbers here we can refer to. So let's make some numbers now for all the different areas we want to track. Start with the taking off the footage and making a snapshot of just the leaves. We can use that as reference as we figure out where we want to track. So it looks like, let's start right here. There's some leaves right here in this section of the screen that need to be tracked. Let's make a text layer. Select the text tool, click in the screen, and just type 1. And this will be our first reference number. We're going to be tracking this area. So right next door, we have some other leaves that are a little bit close to the camera. Let's make a number for them. To make another text layer, we're going to have to deselect the current one, and then select it again, and then select the type tool again. And we'll make it 2 for that. Now up here, we're going to have some other leaves that need, these leaves up here need some tracking data for them because they're a little closer to the camera. So let's make a 3 for them. Deselect, reselect, and type 3. Now these layers, this dark red layer, all these leaves up here are the closest leaves to the camera. So they're going to need their own tracking data as well. So let's make a number for them too. We're up to 4 now. And now the leaves in the set, we have some leaves in the center of the screen, right around here. Let's make a number for them, because they'll be tracking these far away branches behind this tree. That's moving at a different speed than all the other layers we've made so far. So let's make a 5 for those. And then moving on to the other side of the screen, we just have a few more blocks of leaves that need tracking data. Let's make a 6 for these leaves right here. Deselect the 5, reselect it, and hit 6. And then we have some leaves over here for this close tree. We're going to need some tracking data for that. Let's make a 7 for them. And then finally, we have these leaves right here. So let's make our final reference number 8 for this area. So now we have all the different areas we need to track. Let's turn these numbers into guide layers. Now, guide layers will not render when we render the final image. So because we don't want these numbers on our final image, we're going to make them into guide layers. Just go select them all, go to Layer, and it's off the screen, but it'll be in the center of the menu, Guide Layer. And you can tell they're guide layers because these little blue icons appear next to them. So now they will not render in our final image. So now we know which area we need to track. Let's start tracking, starting with number 1. Select the footage, the bottom of the screen, the bottom of the composition, and we'll go to Animation and select Track Motion. That'll open up our layer window, and we need to move our tracking point to the area we want to track. So let's find this area 1 in the composition window. I'm panning around it and zooming in and out with the middle mouse button and scroll wheel. and we're going to find this area over here in the layer window. It looks like it's between these two trees right here. So we're going to move this tracking point down there. We can move a tracking point by selecting the area inside the inner box, not on the crosshairs and not on the edge of the box, just right here. And that way it will move it and not try to resize it for you or move the center point. So we're going to move that down here and find an area to track. It looks like right here is a good place. It's a very nice contrasty place. It's a big contrast between the background and the foreground. So we're going to move this tracking data so the little X center point is right at the crook of the tree. And under options under your tracking, make sure it's set to luminance because we want to track the luminance here. The luminance values are a lot darker on this branch than they are in the background. So set it to luminance, click OK, get in the last frame, and click on the Analyze Backwards arrow. And After Effects is analyzing the track, and it's doing a really good job. Look at that. It's right on target. So we got number 1 down. Let's do number 2. So we're going to reselect the footage, go to Animation, Track Motion again, and we got another tracking point. We're going to find the number 2 area over here, move that new tracking point we just created over there, and we need to find a point to track over here. Now, it doesn't look like we have nice contrasty values anymore. It looks like they're just a bunch of leaves. So we're going to have to track some of these leaves. We're going to need to look for some leaves to track that are different saturation values than the leaves around them. It looks like right around here, these leaves right here look like a good bet. You see they're a lot less saturated than the leaves around them. So let's change our options to saturation instead of luminance. Click OK, and we'll zoom out a little bit. Make sure in the last frame and analyze backwards. And look, After Effects is doing a really good job of tracking these. So we got number 2 down. And so let's move on to number 3. Reselect the footage, go to Animation, Track Motion. Got a new tracking point, a new area to track. We're going to pan up to the 3 area, and we need to find some place to track right around there. Looks like we have a nice block of leaves here that's going to be a different brightness value than the leaves around it, right here. And we can use luminance to track these leaves. So let's change it from saturation back to luminance again under our options for the tracker. Set it to luminance, click OK, and let's track these guys. Hit the Analyze Backwards button, and it's tracking it pretty good. Okay, so we got 3. Let's go into 4. Reselect the footage, go to Animation, Track Motion again. We're going to find the 4 area in both our composition window, and that's going to be up here. We're going to be tracking the leaves at the top of the screen. So we got to find a point to track up here to represent these leaves that are closest to the camera. So moving up to this area now. Oops, accidentally played it. We need to stay on the last frame of the sequence. And it looks like these leaves over here are close to the camera, so they're going to give us a nice reference to leaves moving that are close to the camera. And we're going to want to measure luminance, I think. It looks like we got some nice contrast here with luminance. So let's move it to right around here. And we're going to set this to, make sure it's set to luminance, which it is. Zoom out, and let's see how this tracks. Very nicely. Okay, so we have the upper red leaves tracked with the number 4 area. Let's do another tracking to it. So as you can see, under motion trackers, all these trackers are being automatically named 1, 2, 3, 4, and with the corresponding numbers. It works out very conveniently. So let's do one number 5. So with the footage selected, go to Animation, Track Motion again. And we need to find the 5 area in both the composition window and the layer window. So it's 5 is right over here, right next to this tree here. So let's find that over here in the layer window. It's going to be right next to this fork tree here. I'm going to zoom in, grab this little guy. Oops, see, I accidentally grabbed the resizing thing on the edge of this box. So I'm going to Control-Z to undo that, and be very careful not to select the edge of the box. Just select it in the center of the box and move it down here. Okay, so we need to find something in this 5 area to track. Looks like we have some nice branches we could possibly use. how about this little branch down here? Looks like it has a nice contrast that we can use. Let's go to the base of this branch, the crook of the tree. It worked pretty well for us before tracking a crook of a branch. Let's see if it works again. I'm going to hit backward. I'm going to go to the last frame, though. We want to track from the beginning of the sequence. And we select that crook of the branch. And let's track backwards. And look at that. It's doing really well. Okay, so we have that one down. Let's move on to our next number. Number 6. Select the footage again. Go to Animation, Track Motion. Find 6 over here. It's going to be this area up here. Find it in the layer window. Zooming in. And I'm going to move this guy over there. Let's go back to the beginning of the sequence here. Frame 156, the end. And it looks like there's a nice dark green leaf right there. So let's track that little guy right there. And we're going to set this, make sure the options are set to luminance again. They are. And we'll track backwards on that. And it looks like it's tracking pretty well. Nice. Okay. So we got that one down. Let's go to 7. Finding 7 over here in the composition window. It's on the left side of the screen. Let's go back to the last frame of the sequence. Here's the 7 area. Let's make another tracker for it. Select the footage, go to Animation, Track Motion again. And we got to find a point to track right around this tree on the left side here. So let's move that tracking point down over there. So what are we going to track here? It looks like there's some white part of the bark right here. Maybe we could track the luminance right there and that would work. So put that right over the white bark. Let's make it a little bit wider. And let's track it. And it looks like it's locked on there pretty tight. Okay. So we got that one down. Follow it. Seems like it's following it very nicely. Okay, and now I think it's the last one, number 8. Select the footage again, go to Animation, Track Motion, and let's find number 8 over here in the composition window. It's going to be right to the left of this tree with a V in it. So I'm going to drag our tracking point over there. And we got to find a tracking point to track right around here. Okay, let's pan around here and try and find something that works. Looks like this little bunch of leaves down here might work. Let's try that. And we'll set that, make sure that's set to luminance, click OK, and see how that tracks. Hey, not bad. Okay, so now we have all our points tracked, and so now you know how to track different areas inside of After Effects. In the next lesson, we're going to learn how to apply this tracking data to nulls. In this lesson, you will learn how to apply the tracking data to some nulls. So you've got our trees all tracked, and we're going to want to make these layers of leaves move with the tracking data. But before we can do that, we need to apply the tracking data to some nulls so we can parent the layers to those nulls. So first we got to make those nulls that we're going to apply the tracking data to. So let's do that. To make a new null, we're going to select the top layer, so we create these nulls at the top of the composition. And I'm going to go to Layer and select New and select Null Object. A null object is essentially a layer that you can't see, but you can use it to parent stuff to, and you can apply tracking data to it. So we're going to rename this null from null1, hit Enter, and we're going to call this Track1. Now we're going to need 7 more of these nulls because we have 8 different tracking data to transfer. So just hit Control-D to duplicate it, and After Effects automatically renames it sequentially. So now it's named Track2. So just keep doing this until you have 8 of these tracking nulls. So now we're going to apply the tracking data to the null. So go to our tracker window and make sure your motion source is set to footage, and then we have access to the tracking data we just tracked. Set the current track to tracker 1. And then you're going to want to edit the target. So click on Edit Target, and we're going to select the layer that we want to apply the tracking data to. That would be the track 1 null we just made. So select that, click OK. And now we want to apply the tracking data to that null. So hit Apply, and apply dimensions X and Y. Yes, that's what we want. Click OK. So now, if we go to our track 1, it's now moving with the footage. As you can see, if I hit U, if I select the track 1 and hit U, its position is now changing. So we're going to want to do that with all of these layers. Let's do the second one. Go set the current track to tracker 2, and then we're going to edit the target, change the layer we're edited to track 2, click OK, click Apply, and click OK. And now tracker number 2, track 2 also has tracking data applied to it. As you can see, it's now moving with the footage. So rather than repeat this 6 more times, I'm just going to pause the video, and we can do this separately, and I'll resume after all this tracking data has been applied. Okay, so now as you can see, I've applied all the tracking data to the respective nulls, and your scene should look something like this. So now we're going to parent these reference numbers we have to the tracking data nulls. This is what we're going to be doing with the leaf layers soon. But first, let's just apply it to these numbers so we get them moving with our reference. So we take a select number 1 and go to the parent, pull down the menu, and parent it to track 1. And then select the number 2 and parent it to track 2. And you should make sure you are on the last frame of the sequence before you do this, frame 156. So continuing on number 3, you're going to parent to track 3, 4, parent to track 4, 5, parent to track 5, and then 6, parent to track 6. It's pretty simple. I think you get the idea. 7 and 8. So now we move from the last frame, and as you can see, all these numbers are now moving with the tracking data. So we see what's going to be happening soon with the leaf layers are going to be moving with these very soon. So now you know how to apply tracking data to nulls. In the next lesson, we're going to get the leaf layers moving with the tracking data. In this lesson, you will learn how to break down the leaf layers with masks and get them moving with the tracking data. So we're going to start off with the orange leaf layer, break it down with masks, and then parent those different layers to the tracking data to get them moving with the pan. So let's start off in the last frame of the sequence, because that's the frame 156, where we used as a reference to draw our Photoshop file. So that's where everything lines up. So we're going to want to draw our masks and divide up the leaf layers on that frame. And then we're going to take our orange leaves and solo it along with the footage. And then take a snapshot of that by clicking on the little camera icon. And that will make a snapshot we can use for reference so we can see what it looks like with leaves behind it. So, but right now we can turn off the footage, and we're going to turn on our reference numbers from 1 through 7, because we're not going to need 8 right now. We just need 1 through 7 for these orange leaves. So now we can see where the tracking data is, because our reference numbers are right next to it. So let's start off with the area number 1, where we have tracking for the number 1 area. We're going to select our orange leaves and select the pen tool and just draw a mask around the leaves right next to the 1. And then we can look at how it looks like with leaves behind it, and you can see that will work well. So let's do the same thing for 2. Select the orange leaves again, select our pen tool, but right now, because this mask is set to add, we can't see any of the other leaves. So we're going to have to change this mask from add to none. That way, we'll be able to see the other leaves, and we can draw our next mask. So for number 2, select the orange leaves, select our pen tool, and let's draw a mask right around the 2, and the leaves next to the 2 for tracking data. And if accidentally you click off the mask, you can't complete the mask, what you can do is just select one of the points, select your mask, your pen tool again, and then you should be able to complete the mask. So let's set that to none as well, and move on to drawing the mask around 3. Now we can look at our snapshot here and see that the leaves we want to draw around 3 should be right around here, because we want those leaves to be on the same tree for the tracking data. So let's draw the mask again. And we can adjust these masks later as well, but right now we're drawing them the best we can. Got 3 down. Let's set this to none again. And let's move on to 4. For 4, let's look at our snapshot. And it looks like we want to have these leaves right here. They're going to be on the trees, on this part of the tree, around the 4. The leaves over here look like they're going to be closer to 5 on that tree. So let's select the orange leaves again, select the pen tool, and we'll draw our mask around the 4. These 4 leaves. And notice, because we're doing this sequentially, 1, 2, 3, 4, our masks are being numbered correctly. So mask number 4 goes for the number 4. Mask number 3 goes for the number 3, which is very convenient and keeps things organized without us having to actually label them ourselves. So let's move on to 5. Select the pen tool. It looks like, let's look at the snapshot again. It looks like the leaves over here are going to be on the other track, 6, but you want to have these 3 little grouping of leaves on 5. So let's draw a mask around them. And let's set that mask back to none so we can see the other leaves. And then for 6, I think we're going to have these 2 groupings of leaves be on the same mask. Select 6, draw around these 2 guys, set that to none again, and then by default we know what 7 is going to be, that little group of leaves right there. So select the pen tool again, and we'll draw our mask around 7. Okay, so we have all our masks, set this to none as well. We have all our masks done. Now we're going to have to make a separate layer for each of these masks. So we're going to need to duplicate this orange leaves layer multiple times. But let's rename this orange leaves 1. And then when we duplicate it, After Effects will duplicate it sequentially. Orange leaves 2, orange leaves 3, orange leaves 4, orange leaves 5, orange leaves 6, 7, and we have 7 different layers. Now, they're all doubling up right now, but we need to set each mask to be add for its corresponding layer. So let's start with 1, orange leaf 1, and we'll change the mask 1 from none to add. So now the orange leaf 1, if we unsolo all the layers, orange leaf 1 is going to just show the one next to 1. Now for 2, we'll do the same thing, unsolo that, and go down to masks, and set the mask for number 2 to add as well. So now 2 is just using that mask. We can ignore all these other masks because they're set to none. We just want to set the mask for its layer for number 2 to add. So let's do the same thing for 3. Unsolo that, go down to the masks, set mask 3 to add. And then on orange leaf 4, you're going to want to set the mask on 4 to add. And I think you get the idea now. The same thing for 5. Mask 5 set to add. 6. Mask 6 also set to add. And finally, number 7. Set that to add as well. Mask 7, add. So now we have each of these different orange leaves on its own corresponding layer. So now all that remains to do is we have to parent these different layers to the tracking data we have. So make sure we're on the frame 156, and we're just gonna let's toggle these so the comp is easier to navigate. We have them all untoggled so we can see them more clearly. And then we'll go to orange leaf layer 1. We can go right to the parenting column, pull it down, and we're going to parent that to track 1. And then number 2, parent to track 2. Number 3, track 3. And you go down through the list, parenting the orange leaf layer with its corresponding tracking number. Now you can see why it makes a lot of sense to use numbers for this. 5 to 5, 6 to 6. It's just a lot easier to work with numbers than long names. And we have these nice corresponding labels right here, labeling numbers as well. Now we're on the last one, 7. We'll parent that to track 7. And it looks like we have everything parented. So let's unsolo these layers and see how they're moving. Except we only want to have the orange leaves on now. Let's turn off the yellow leaves and the dark red leaves. And we'll also turn off the golden leaf layer background so we can see them a little more clearly. And look at that. We have our leaves moving with the background. So looks like we're going to do the same thing with the yellow leaves. So rather than to bore you with more repetition, I'm just going to pause the video, let you do the yellow leaves on your own. I'll do the yellow leaves on my own, and we'll meet back here in a few moments. Okay, so now I have all the yellow leaf layers separated and parented in, and you should have the same. And you may have noticed that we did not need leaf layers for 1 and 2 because there are no yellow leaves around there. For me, anyway. For you, you may have had yellow leaves in those areas. And as you pan through, as you can see, the yellow leaves and the orange leaves are moving with the tracking data. So all that remains is our dark red leaf layer. So let's turn that on. And this layer, if you remember, is only going to have one layer. It's just matching up with the closest leaves coming from the center tree. So we just need to take it and mask it one time. We'll just draw a mask around it. And we're going to want to have the mask on this end be feathered because it's going to be moving and we don't want to have a harsh edge. So just feather it off on the right side. And we're going to want to increase the feathering. We can do that with our feathering mask tool. Just drag out a feathering point on it. And you can drag on the inside as well. We want the upper part to not be feathered though, so we'll drag some points up there. And then let's zoom in a little bit and see the effect we're getting. We can turn off the orange leaves for now. Let's see what it looks like by itself. Turn off the masks. That's looking pretty good. Let's turn on the footage and see what it looks like over the footage. Okay, so now we're going to take this, the dark red leaves, and we just need to parent this to track number 4. So go down to the parenting and make that parent to the track 4, and now it's moving with the closest leaf. So let's turn on the visibility of all our leaves right now. The dark red, the yellow, and the orange. And if you can see, they're moving with the footage. So now we have all the leaf layers broken down with masks and moving with the tracking data. In the next lesson, though, we're going to have to get them composited behind the tree trunks. So if you zoom in, you can see that this tree is actually moving in front of some of the colored leaves. So we're going to want to have that composited behind the tree so we don't see any orange leaves in front of the tree trunks. So we're going to learn how to do that in the next lesson. In this lesson, you will learn how to composite the leaf layers behind the tree trunks. So as we saw at the end of the last lesson, there's a problem with some of these leaf layers when the tree trunks. As you can see here, right around 5, we have some of these leaves going in front of the tree trunk, and they need to be behind the tree trunk. So we're going to fix that by creating a mat for the tree trunks. So to do that, let's duplicate the footage by selecting it and hitting Control-D, and then we're going to solo it. So turn off the solo layers for all the other layers, and we'll rename this footage by hitting the Enter key and type in tree trunk mat. Now to make this mat, we're going to use the extract key here. So with this tree trunk mat selected, go up to Effects, go down to Keying, and the submenu that's off the screen right now, select the extract and then right in the middle of that submenu. So now we have the extract effect applied, and for the extract effect, we have to pick a channel to use to make our mat. So it's set to luminance right now, but we want to pick the channel that has the most contrast between the tree and the background behind it. So let's take a look at each channel in turn. Well, let's look at the red channel first. Okay, that's what the red channel looks like. Let's compare it to the green channel. Looks like the green channel has some nicer contrast between the tree and the background. You see how the tree is darker than it was in the previous red channel. Let's check out the blue channel. Well, that's clearly not going to work at all. There's so much noise in the background, very dark. So let's use the green channel. So change the extract channel in the effects controls to green. And now we can adjust this end of the white point, and as we bring it down, we can see there are more and more holes appearing in the background. So we want to make it so we get a nice mat right around the tree trunks. Keep bringing it down until it can't bring it any farther without eating away at the trunk. It looks like around 29 or so gives us a good result. I'm just going to set it to like 30. And now it's this little bit ragged edged here. We can fix that with a little fast blur. So select our tree trunk mat and go up to Effects, go into Blur Sharpen, and select Fast Blur. It's in the submenu towards the bottom. You can't see it because it's off screen, but you'll be able to find it easily. And let's just give it a 3 Fast Blur. And that softens up the mat nicely. So we're going to use this tree trunk mat. Let's unsolo it, and we're going to bring it right above the Orange Leaves 5. And then we'll take the Orange Leaf layer 5 and set the track mat to Alpha Inverted. And that's going to fix our problem. As you can see, these orange leaves are no longer going in front of the tree. See, if we solo our orange leaves, we'll see it being matted by this tree mat right now. So we can use the same mat to fix some of these other layers that are going in front of trees. A little more subtle, but might as well just get it looking so they're not in front of the trees at all. So let's use that for orange level 1. Layer 1 has some problems with trees being in front of it. Let's duplicate the tree trunk mat, bring that down in front of orange layer 1, level 1, and set that to be track mat to Alpha Inverted mat as well. So it fixes that being in front of those branches a little bit. And over here on this side, before it was overlapping the trunk slightly, and now it is being matted by a tree trunk mat. In addition to orange level 1, we can also fix orange level 7. That has potential problems with being in front of tree trunks. Over here on this side, you can see it's interfering with this tree trunk right here. Let's fix that by duplicating our orange tree trunk mat, putting it above orange level 7, and we'll set the track mat to Alpha Inverted. And now it's not in front of the tree trunk as much as it was before. And same thing with our yellow layers. We've got a couple of those that are around the same area as the orange layers that could use a nice tracking mat as well, especially 5. Let's duplicate the tree trunk mat again, and we'll put that above yellow leaf 5. Set that to track mat, Alpha Inverted mat, tree trunk mat. Fix that up. And we're also going to want to set that for the orange level, yellow 7 too. So duplicate tree trunk mat. Put that on top of yellow level 7 because yellow level 7 is right around where the orange leaves were around 7, and that needed a mat. So we need one for the yellow leaves too. So now we have all our leaves matted to be behind the tree trunks. And in the next lesson, we're going to finish off the shot by adding some more orange leaves using an adjustment layer and a mask with some tracking data. In this lesson, we're going to finish off the shot by adding some more orange leaves with an adjustment layer and a mask using tracking data. So we got this shot almost done. We're just going to finish it off by adding a band of orange leaves down here, which will balance out the composition and give us some more color down in this lower third of the scene. So we're going to need to do that with an adjustment layer and a mask that follows some tracking data. So let's create the adjustment layer first. Go up to Layer, select New, and Adjustment Layer. And we're going to move this to make sure your adjustment layer is below the golden hue adjustment layer. And we're going to rename it by hitting Enter and type reddish leaves ADJ layer for adjustment layer. And to make our reddish leaves, we're going to use the same hue saturation effect we used before. So with the reddish adjustment layer selected, go up to Effects and go down to Color Correction and select our hue saturation effect, which should be down towards the bottom in the submenu that's off the screen right now. So we got our hue saturation effect applied, and now let's solo the footage, our new adjustment layer, and the golden hue adjustment layer on top of that so we can see how these two adjustment layers are working together. Now for the reddish leaf adjustment layer, we're going to want to affect the green leaves only. So change the channel control from master to greens. And then we're going to change the green hue. Let's change it to be altered about 302 degrees. And it doesn't seem to be doing anything, because if you remember, we have to adjust the channel range, the area of the color range that's being affected by this effect. So if we expand it outwards, you see it's being affected quite a bit, and it gets quite red. So let's adjust this a little bit so we get a nice reddish quality to our leaves here. That looks pretty good. But we only want to affect the leaves down here in the lower third, not the grass and not the leaves up here. So we're going to need to make a mask layer to mat it out. So let's make our mat now. Let's go up to Layer, New, Solid, and we'll make it comp size. And then let's make the width a little bit wider than comp size so it can pan with the scene. Let's make it 1/500. Okay, so we have our solid, and let's rename it Reddish Leaves Matte. And turn off its visibility. Now we're going to draw a mask here on our reddish leaf mat. Grab our pen tool and just draw a nice mask right over the bottom part of the screen. Sort of rounded towards the end. Don't want to get in any of the lawn here, or the grass. We just want the leaves. So draw something like this. It can go off the edge a bit. And we're going to want to feather this, so let's grab our mask feather tool and feather it out and in a bit. And now we're going to set our reddish leaf adjustment layer to be a track matted to this mat we just created. So let's set it to alpha mat, and now it's just affecting these lower leaves. And we can adjust our mat to make it look a little nicer here. Expand out our feathering with the feather tool. There, that's looking a little bit more natural looking. And we'll bring this in down here because we don't want it over the lawn. And to hide the mask. That's looking pretty good. Let's see what it looks like with all the other layers. So unsolo these, and look at that. We have a nice band of reddish leaves being created at the bottom of the screen, and we didn't have to do very much masking at all. However, we're going to want to have this to pan along with the pan. So we're going to have to make this parented, take the mat, and we're going to take the parenting and parent it to track number 8, which will best follow these far trees. And you can see now it's panning along with the scene. So I'm going to pause and RAM preview for a moment, and I'll be right back. Okay, so I've gone and RAM previewed, and I've made all the numbers not visible anymore, our reference numbers, and made the screen bigger. And so now let's take a look. I'll hit 0 to play it. Nice. So now you know how to add some orange leaves with an adjustment layer and a mask with tracking data, and now you know how to change the seasons from spring to fall, which once was spring is now autumn. And now you can use these same techniques to change anything you want, whether it's a shot from fall to winter or from modern times to hundreds of years in the future.